Today's lecture concerns the holiday of Purim, and specifically the way it was written in the Megillah Esther. Now, it's interesting that we talk about the mystery behind the mask, because the very essence of the name Esther itself comes from the Hebrew word astir hastir, which means hidden, away, not clarified, very, very mysterious. Now, why did she have this name as Esther? Well, because everybody has all different kind of names. But if we believe in Hashgacha Pratis, if we believe in divine providence, the name itself gives a lot of insight into the story of the Magillah. Why do I say that? Because the whole story doesn't make sense. The whole story is from A to Z, a political intrigue, plots back and forth. There are, in Judaism, as explained through many commentators, two separate types of miracles. Miracle number one is like the splitting of the Red Sea. You don't have to be a big believer to be freaked out by something like that. I mean, you're just going to be standing at the Red Sea, and I don't care if you happen to be Spinoza, or you happen to be Galileo, or you happen to be Einstein. I don't care. If you're standing at that edge of the water, and all of a sudden, bingo, Moses hits the water, and the walls stand up, you're freaking out. Okay? You are absolutely freaking out no matter what. Especially, it tells us the way that it's described in the Medrash, in the oral tradition, that there was actually fish floating in the walls, and there was whales in the walls, and trees were growing. I mean, believe me, you could be the biggest heretic. You're standing there, you're freaking. Why? Because from time to time, God allows nature to be suspended, and He intervenes, and He does something like that. Okay. Now, those are what we call open miracles. They happen primarily in the Torah, where Moses gives the man. I mean, you wake up in the morning and you start eating dew, and it starts to taste like chocolate cake. And either it's very bad mushrooms, which has been known to taste like anything, or it's a miracle, or a rock is rolling along with you and giving forth water. You just don't see that today. I mean, it doesn't happen to us. So those things, those miracles, and we talked about in the Torah and the prophets and all of that, that's what we call open miracles. God was very, very involved in nature at that time, very involved with human beings, and His relationship was very different. Very, very different. For example, this is really when we talk about the holiday of Hanukkah, right? The holiday of Hanukkah, even though that in the beginning it started out as a regular, it was a political situation. The Maccabees were angry at the Greeks were angry at the Maccabees. The Maccabees decided, let's take matters in our own hands. They formed an army, they went after the Greeks, and they destroyed them. Okay, so in and of itself, it's not the only time, and it's not even the first time in the history of mankind where a small dedicated group of people overthrew a vastly greater army. Because it's not really the size of the man in the fight. It's really the size of the fight in the man. Right? So many times throughout history we've seen that small little bands of dedicated warriors can stop a great army. Look, the Roman Empire was stopped. Right? Even they lost a war or two. Great armies have lost because that's the way it goes. So in and of itself, even though it was ma'atim and there was rabbim, there was few and they were many, which is a miracle, great miracle, but still we could have always explained it in the sense as, Judah Maccabee was a tremendous tactician, tremendous guy, and he knew how to fight a war. But what cannot be explained away so easily is the fact that one little cruse of oil this big that should have lasted for one day lasted for 8 days. That's not so easily explained away. That's not something like, that happens every day where you light something and then all of a sudden, it lasts and we're very happy and it lasts and lasts and lasts and lasts. Like one of the unsung heroes of the Bible, I've always said, is the last guy who got the job of guarding the flame. You see, because the first day everybody got excited, right? I mean, they found this little cruise, it lit. Oh, everybody was jumping up and down and they hung around. Then it lasted 24 hours and it kept burning, and slowly everybody just, hey, let me know when it's going to, and one by one everybody left, and they said, okay, Bob, your job is going to be, you're going to tell us when the flame is going to go out, because we got other things, got to go shopping, and poor Bob is waiting, and 2 days go by, 4 days go by, 6 days go by, and poor Bob is standing there, he has to really go to the bathroom, but he can't leave, because God, what happens if it goes out, and while he's there, so he's one of the unsung heroes of the Bible. We never hear about this guy, right? You never hear about this guy. Judah Maccabee, he gets all of the things. But what about that guy that kept the candle going for 8 days? Okay, but that's not what this discussion is all about. That we'll talk about another time. That's an open miracle. Esther is completely mysterious. Esther is the only book in the entire Torah that does not have God's name in it, not even once. Not one time is God mentioned from the beginning, and it's part of the canon. It's not like Esther is what we call Apocrypha or pseudo-Apocrypha. There are books that came in afterwards that weren't included in the Tanakh. Like the Maccabees, the book of Maccabees is not included in Tanakh. Other books not included in Tanakh. Esther is part of the Tanakh. You're familiar with the term Tanakh, right? The Torah, Nevi'im, Uksuvim. The Torah is made up of 3 sections. The Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses, which deals primarily from when the world was created until Moses' death. The prophets, which basically deal with all of the major events from when they entered into the land of Israel until the destruction of the first temple and a little beyond. And then there's this writings we call, for example, Song of Songs, familiar with Shir HaShirim, the book of Job, the book of Proverbs, others like that, the book of Lamentations, which are not really historical, but they're just books written by these authors. And Esther is one of them. If you put all of these books together, we have what we call the canon. Those are what we call inspired works, divine works. And Esther is in one of them. And it's the only one of all of these books that you will not find God's name not even once inside the Magillah. And the question that was always confounded the rabbis was, why not? I mean, think about this. Because all the twists and turns obviously were directed by God's hand. It wasn't like all of a sudden Mordechai one day woke up and, decided he's going to study every language. And he listens to Bigsan and Serish, as they plot to kill the king. Obviously, God was directing everybody here, but yet he does not get credit. Not get credit at all. Why? Because here's where miracle number 2 comes into play. Where sometimes the miracle that God performs here on earth are dressed up and covered over by what we call natural occurrences. Like everything here in the Megillah made sense. Made perfect sense. I mean, you think about it, I'll go over it quickly, so, just to refresh our memory. There was a king had a wife, told his wife to dance, she refused, he hung her. Okay, so that happens every day. I mean, especially with English history, remember the story of I'm Henry VIII, I am, how many wives did he have? 8, and every one he killed right up. So that happens. That's not only happens by Achashverosh, but a lot of kings that kill their wives. Okay, king wakes up, he takes a cold shower, they smack him around a little bit, he sobers up, then he remembers, oh my God, what did I just do? I killed Vashti, my wife. Okay, problem, now he's lonely and he wants to marry a new wife. So he throws out this idea that every girl in the whole kingdom should come, and who does he marry? None other than the most beautiful, fairest of them all, the Cinderella of Shushan, Esther. Okay, Esther doesn't say that she's Jewish because her uncle Mordechai tells her, or her cousin or her uncle tells her, don't tell them who you are because they don't like Jews, so just go live around hiddenly fine. She becomes the king, and just happens to be that Mordechai hangs around the palace because now he's a big shot. Now that his cousin is the queen, he can hang around the palace, and he happens to hear where these 2 nefarious gentlemen are plotting to kill the king, Bigsan and Serish. He squeals on them, he saves the day, and they get hung, and Mordechai is put down in the book of remembrances as the hero. At the same time, we're going to introduce our villain, and his name is Boo. That's right, Haman, right? He's the bad guy because every story needs a hero, and every story needs an anti-hero. So the villain is Haman. Haman hates Mordechai because Mordechai will not bow down to him. Mordechai is Jewish, and Haman wears this necklace like an idol, and everybody is all freaking out over Haman because he's the most popular guy now in Shushan. Mordechai is not bowing down to him, so it angers him because everybody is like kowtowing to him. There's one independent guy in the whole town, and he figures he's going to get Mordechai. He's really angry at this guy Mordechai, so he decides what is he going to do to kill all of the Jews. Now, isn't that funny? Isn't that strange? Okay, he gets mad at one guy, and he's going to kill all of the Jews. Why? Why doesn't he just kill Mordechai? What am I? It's my problem that Mordechai is doesn't want to bow down. Bow down, Mordechai. What do you want from me? I mean, I got a wife, I got children, I got a business, I got to take care of. Next thing I know, I'm like running for my life. With this. See, the difference between a Jew and an anti-Semite is very small. You know what the difference is between a Jew and an anti-Semite? An anti-Semite says, you know what? This Jew I like. It's everybody else that I hate. You see? The Jew says exactly the opposite. I love all Jews except this one. Him I hate. That's the difference between a Jew and an anti-Semite. So that's what Haman was saying. He hates this guy. He's going to kill everybody. We don't know for what reason, but he decides he's going to kill them. So Achashverosh loves one thing more than anything else in the entire world. And you know what that is? I'll give you a hint. Money, because every king needs money. A king needs money. You know why? Because that's the blood of politics, right? That's the milk that politicians suck on at all times. They need that money. Why? Because you got to pay an army, you got to pay this, you got to pay that. So he offers him 10,000 silver talents to kill the Jews. He cares. Achashverosh, kill the Jews, don't kill the Jews. I mean, as long as I get 10,000 bucks in my pocket, do whatever you want. Fine. Which reminds me of a story. Just to prove it, that money is everything. You see, people that say money isn't everything, you know who says that? People with no money. The people that have money never ever one time did I ever hear Warren Buffett ever say money is not everything. He says money actually is everything. And so here's between World War I and World War II. Can we edit this tape if something is said inadvertently? Paul, I just was one. Okay, because this joke. Okay, so between World War I and World War II, there was a fellow that ruled over Poland. His name was Pilsudski. Pilsudski was the prime minister of Poland, beloved man. Everybody loved him. Okay, so one time he wanted to actually see how much do people really love him. So he sent out a message that Pilsudski is coming into the train station in Lodz on this day. But what he did was he dressed himself up in a farmer's uniform so no one should recognize him. He gets off the train, he sees a line of taxis. He goes to the first taxi driver, will you take me into Lodz? No, I'm waiting for Pilsudski. Oh, good. He loves it. He goes to the next guy, he says, will you take me into town? No, I'm waiting for Pilsudski. He loves this. He goes third, fourth. The fifth guy, he says, you know what? I'll give you, in Poland those days, there was 100 zloty bill. And on the 100 zloty bill was a fellow by the name of Katyusha. He was like an old prime minister, and he was like, whoever it is, Hamilton, on the bill, Benjamin Franklin. He says, I'll give you a Katyusha. He says, oh, Katyusha, get in. Okay, he's not so happy now. He's sitting in the taxi. So as the taxi's going, Glenda, he says, tell me, weren't you waiting for Pilsudski? He says, let me tell you. When I have a Katyusha in my pocket, Pilsudski can kiss me and, Okay? So that just shows you that, what money is. That's right. So here Haman comes to Achashverosh and says, listen, I'll give you 10,000 talents to kill the Jews. Jews, schmooze, orange Jews, apple Jews. He doesn't care about this. He says, go kill them. Okay, so he puts out the word that he's going to kill them all, right? Okay, so the Jews are freaking out now because all of a sudden here they're living the life of Riley, and in 2 days, the next thing you know, they're going to be killed. Mordechai finds out about this. So he goes to Esther. Now here's where the plot thickens. He goes to Esther and he tells Esther, hey, you know what? You got to go to Achashverosh and tell him that, to save the Jews. She says, I can't do it. He says, what do you mean you can't do it? She says, well, you know what? No, you can't just walk up to the king, and say, hey, I want to talk to you. You have to be summoned. And I haven't been summoned for 30 days. So this is what Mordechai tells her, hey, listen. You know what? You see, you think in your mind that you've been appointed to be queen because you're so special? No. Let's be honest. You were appointed to be queen because your job is to save the Jewish people. And if you don't, then we'll get somebody else to do it. And then you're going to be gone forever. So she gathers up her courage. She goes to Achashverosh. She has this unbelievable, strange request. What's your request? Oh, because Achashverosh sees her from standing at the door, and his heart is filled with love because he hasn't seen this beautiful Esther for some time. And he says, what can I do for you? So instead of saying, you know what, why don't you take Haman and kill him? No, she has this weird request. She says, I want you and Haman to come to a party. Hey, why not? So Haman decides, Achashverosh calls Haman and says, guess what? We're invited to a party, the three of us. Oh, Haman feels like $1 billion, man. Look at me and the king and the queen, nobody else. I am the man of men. I am tremendous. I am so happy. And as he leaves the party, who's standing outside of the palace? And what does Mordechai not do to him? Bow down. So he's filled with rage. He goes home and he's just beyond himself. He's beside himself. And his wife says to him, listen, you know what? You're never going to have any kind of satisfaction. Now listen, this is a very important lesson. I want to comment just on this just for a moment. She says, you will never have any satisfaction as long as Mordechai is around. And you know, the Haman says, you're right. You know what? Everything, just imagine, tonight at 8 o'clock, it was just me, the king, and Esther. That's it. Nobody else was in the room. The whole kingdom could have gone Kebinya. Who knows? It could have gone to pot. No one else, just the three of us. And yet, I can't have any satisfaction as long as that guy's around. You know what? That teaches us a tremendous amount. There are some people in life that are farginners. You know what a farginner is in Yiddish? A fargint. You know what fargint means? Fargint means like, you know what? That camera that Paul has, I'm happy for him that he has such a camera. You know, I buy a camera, I'm happy that Paul has such a camera. Then there are people was kennen nicht farginnen. They can't take it. They can't take the fact that Paul has a nice camera. Even though I could afford to buy such a camera, and even though I might even have such a camera, but the fact that he also has a camera, I don't like it. And it makes me sick to see every time he brings this camera. That's what we call a nicht farginner. You know what? These people walk around life, they're always miserable. Like, you know what? There's a Magillah that we're going to be reading from. Bob has it. Maybe if he allows us, we'll take a look at it later on after the class. It's one of a kind. Believe you will never see a Magillah like this in your life. It's a beautiful Magillah. And our people are going to say, he has the Magillah. They can't have any satisfaction because Bob has such a Magillah. We forget this. This is what Haman was all about. He couldn't stand the fact that even though he had everything he had wanted, he had power, he had money, he had prestige, he had popularity, he was everything. But there was one guy in the kingdom that stood like this, and every time he walked by, he just smirked at him. That ate his guts out. He should have said to himself, you know what, don't look at him. Go like, I'm not looking at you. I don't care if you're there. I don't care. I look at all these other people are bowing down. No, so he decides he's going back to the king. See how sick he was? That night he couldn't even sleep. He's going to go back to the king, and what's he going to tell the king to do what?
Kill. Yeah.
Hang up Mordechai. And he even prepared this this gallows 50 cubits high because he was going to show everybody, maybe. Oh, that's Mordechai. Yeah. Okay. So what happened?
As soon as you were at the temple, at the shul by the shop, toward the 11.
Thank you. So then what happens? Okay. So then what happens? He comes, and that night is where the miracle takes place. The first time we find some kind of a miracle. What is it? Achashverosh has insomnia. He's twisting and turning and turning and twisting and twisting. He can't sleep. He gets up. He drinks some more milk. He goes back to sleep. He gets up. He eats some cookies and some more milk. He goes back. Says schluft sich nicht. You know, sometimes when that happens, you could go crazy. If you ever had one of those nights where you just can't sleep, it's like unbelievable. So he finally says, you know what he'll do? He'll start reading. When you read, that's usually the good time when you're out. I know that happens to me. Does it happen to you? You know, you take a book, especially Maimonides' Guide for the Perplexed. You know what? You read 2 sentences, and you're sleeping like a baby. I'm telling you. Okay? Not because the book is not well. No, it's a great book. But the fact is that, you know, if you read something that's very difficult to comprehend. So he decides, okay, he calls in his guys to read. They turn and twist. They don't want to read the story that it's opening up to. Finally, he gets nervous and says, just read right there. So they read about this guy, Mordechai. He saved the king from death. A ganze Geschäft. And the king says, so what did we do for this guy, Mordechai? They say, nothing. We did nothing for him. Oh, so now the king, he has to think, okay, what is he going to do for Mordechai? So he goes out to the balcony to catch a little bit of fresh air, and who's walking down in the garden just exactly at the same time? None other than Haman, right? Than Haman. Okay. So Haman comes back, and he says to Achashverosh says to Haman, hey, you know what? You got to help me out here. You're my most trusted friend, and you are the man. So tell me, what would you do to this guy who saved you, who you really like? And so Haman is so conceited. Who does he think he's talking about?
Himself.
Of course. So he says, I get this beautiful horse. I get the guy. He says, beautiful. You do this to Mordechai. Oh, come on. You got to be kidding. I'm on candid camera. That's the first thing he thought. I got punked. He says, you're punking me, right? This has got to be on like a television show. This couldn't be true. Come on, Achashverosh. You're kidding me. You're such a kidder. No, I'm not kidding you. I want you actually to do this. Okay, so he gets Mordechai and he puts him on the horse and he's parading him all around Shushan. Now he's not so confident when he comes to the second meal, because he just spent this whole day dragging his arch nemesis around Shushan on a horse. So he comes to the second meal, and at the second meal, Esther sees already that the time is right, and she begs the king. She says, King, oh, you are my most beloved. Why would you let someone kill me? Who's going to kill you? And then never let this happen. If you're going to kill the queen, kill her. Don't let her invite you to a party with the king, because she's always going to get the best of you. All right? If you're going to kill her before the party. He didn't do that. He tried to kill Mordechai. He didn't kill Esther. It was a bad move on his part. But he didn't know that she was Jewish, probably. So then he says, you know what? Boom. You're the guy. And he points to Haman. Achashverosh is so angry at this point because his beautiful Esther, he loves her, so he goes outside to catch a breath. Haman does another dumb thing. Oh my God. You see, when you're done, when things are going against you, they usually are going really against you. So he wants to plead with Esther, except he trips. And see, Esther's lying on this bed, because that's how, I guess when you're a queen, I guess you can eat laying down. I can't eat laying down, but if you're a queen, I guess you can eat, and they drop food into your mouth. So she's laying down there, and this poor Shlemazel, Haman, wants to beg, plead. He trips and he actually falls on the bed. So now comes Achashverosh into this room, and guess what he sees? Haman on Esther's bed, let's just say. Okay? So now he's angry outside, and he sees this guy making a move on the queen. So he just freaks out completely. He said, are you nuts? Are you off your rocker completely? In my own house, you're going to make a move on my wife? As I'm standing here, what kind of a fool do you take me to be? Well, Haman tries to explain that he tripped over his gown, there was the this and that. Before you know it, the unsung hero of the whole story, the Charvoina, the Hasach, the chamberlain, says, you know what, king? Listen, I got a good idea. You see that gallows? You're so angry. Why don't we just hang him up? We need a good hanging tonight. Come on, let's go. So he says, good idea, and they hang up Haman that night. They hung him up. And the rest of the story goes that Esther went down and she pleaded, and the Jews, fought a war against the people, and they were saved. Okay? Esther was so thrilled that this happened that she wrote the story down, because no one was going to believe this. Who's going to believe such a fantastic tale, that such a thing happened, all the twists and turns of all of this political intrigue in the palace? So she wrote the story down, and she made a gzeira. She made the rabbis promise her that this is going to be read every year over and over again, and the story will be remembered forever. Because otherwise, it's a story like many stories. There's a lot of Purim stories around in the history. This one stuck. And they wrote it in a fashion, of course, that we believe that traditionally that it was divinely inspired, that Esther, when she wrote it, Mordechai wrote it, it was through God was holding their hand when they're writing the story, and God's name is omitted. Why? Because even though, as I told you the story, how many twists and turns, Mordechai being at the right place, Esther being at the right place, him picking Esther. The odds of this happening is infinitesimal. It's easier to win the lottery than all of these things falling into place. But yet they did. And they fell into place without God openly changing nature. Even though it tells us so many things could have gone wrong. Like, for example, Esther had a different name. You know what Esther's name was? Hadassah. You've heard the name Hadassah?
Yeah.
Like Hadassah, the famous women's organization. Esther Hadassah. Now the Talmud asks, why was she called Hadassah? So one of the rabbis said because she had a complexion that was greenish. Could you believe that? She had a greenish complexion. Others argue that Esther was 75 years old at this story. 75 years old. Okay? Listen, I have nothing against 75-year-old ladies. They're beautiful and they're wonderful and they're just great. I mean, they're great. But I mean, without generalizing, let's just say, okay, without generalizing, okay, if you're gonna pick Miss America, let's just say, I'm gonna put myself out on a ledge right now. I mean, I'm taking a leap of faith that the chances of a 75-year-old woman with a greenish tint winning Miss America in today is pretty small. The good money in Vegas are not going to be on the 75-year-old. So you have a 75-year-old greenish woman show up at the palace to be part of this thing, and she wins the beauty contest. Is either that Achashverosh was really into something kink, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions upon the guy. I hardly even know him, but it's got to be something very strange, out of the ordinary. Or, would they talk an exaggeration sometimes? So maybe she was as wise as she was 75. Maybe the green was as beautiful as an olive oil. Who knows though? Olive oil, remember olive oil? Who ran after olive oil? Popeye, right? So she was as beauty as olive oil. Who knows? I mean, it could be a number of different interpretations could be given for this, but she made it. She did it. So here's a case of a miracle, and here's a great important lesson. The case of a miracle that's done without God intervening in nature. Now we may say, yeah, come on, Rabbi, you know what? Years ago, and I had this discussion this morning, was it this morning? I don't even remember when it was. I think it was this morning. Yeah, this morning. I had my first, for me, and we were discussing the parsha and just Chumash, and the fellow was asking me, he said, Rabbi, why doesn't God look in the world, right? There's a lot of people in the world that don't believe in God, or the Jews in America, they're not very faithful Jews. A lot of people have questions. Why doesn't God just intervene like that? Just cause another Red Sea to split, just like he did back in the biblical days. So there's a lot of different answers, but of course his relationship is very different to us than it was then. But that does not in any way, shape, or form change the fact that miracles do happen. Miracles are happening and do happen. The problem is we're not open-eyed. We're unconscious. And when you're unconscious, you can have a fire burning around you. You also, you don't know. So this fellow's expecting a baby. And I said to him, listen, I'm telling you right now, you want a miracle? In a couple of months, you're going to be in that room when your baby is born. And your baby's going to come out with his nose in the right place, 2 ears, 2 eyes, a mouth, his arms in the right place, a belly button, a tuchus, 10 toes, and 2 knees. You know what you're going to do? You are going to be jumping up and down like the greatest miracle ever happened. And think about that. Is that not the greatest miracle? You take one cell and you split it into billions of cells, and then all the cells should know exactly where to go. How come the nose doesn't end up over here and the eyes, one goes to the back of the head? Why doesn't it happen? Because Hashem programmed all of these things to fall into place in perfect order, and a human being is born. Now we don't look at it as a miracle. You know why? We don't look at it as a miracle? Because it's a commonplace thing. It happens every day. Children are born, you go there, but when you appreciate the miracle, you have to go to a ward when children are sick, and then you say, now we appreciate a healthy baby. But those miracles happen every day. Don't think for a minute that God does not intervene. The 6-day war, which is probably in our lifetime, at least in my lifetime, one of the greatest miracles. Israel, a small little country, surrounded by 5 Arab countries that are out to destroy it, to choke it down, so many more, and they threatened, they said they're going to throw the Jews into the sea. Remember what Abdul Gamal Nasser said? I'm going to throw the Jews into the sea. What ended up happening? The war took 6 days, but you know what? It was over in 3-4 hours. As soon as the Israeli Air Force wiped out the Arab Air Force, they had air superiority, the war was over. Finished, end of discussion. Now it's mop-up time. Okay, it took a little bit to the Golan Heights. They lost some soldiers. They lost 181 paratroopers taking over Jerusalem, because Israel was very careful not to bomb, the holy sites, not only the Jewish holy sites, but not to bomb any holy sites. They took extra precaution. You think they would have been the same if the things were reversed? Please. They would have flattened the Kaisel Maravi in no time, the Western Wall. But nonetheless, it was a tremendous miracle. And people who saw this knew that this is something extraordinary. This is something special. But what happens is that we get excited for 2 weeks. Right? We're excited. Oh, look at what has happened to Israel 2 weeks or 2 months or a year. We're excited, and then we go back to being the same old people that we are always. A few years later, what happens? Remember in Entebbe, July 4th, 1976, exactly 200 years to the day of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. This was America's great day, the bicentennial. Oh, this is going to be. And what happens? Israel knocks the bicentennial right off the front pages. What's the headlines? July 4th, 1976. Israeli paratroopers storm Entebbe airport, rescue everybody except Loyalenu, Yoni Netanyahu. He's the one casualty. Think about that for a moment. You know what? I mean, the guy in charge, he's the one casualty. But you know what? Another great miracle. Who would have believed it? This never happened before. That, and you read the stories of how the pilots had to fly, had to cut their engines. I mean, flying, not the Cessna that you see over here, if you want to go flying. They have now in front of the hotel now, they have flying lessons. You're not flying one of those 2-seater planes. I mean, this guy, there was 2 planes that flew in. One with the soldiers and one that was going to bring back the hostages. Had to fly in undercover at night with no lights, nothing. I mean, you're basically flying blind, and they're able to touch down. Okay, so it helped that actually Israel built the airport and did all of that stuff. They already had the plans to the airport. But that's regardless of all of these things. And it was a tremendous miracle. I mean, they got everybody out. They killed all of the terrorists. They got everybody out. They flew, the plane flew there, they flew there. A tremendous miracle. It lasted another year. Oh, a whole year, everybody's walking around, oh, look what Israeli can do, look what the Israelis can do. No one else had done this before. And the same thing is true the other way. When great tragedies strike, September 11th, everybody will remember where they were that moment, when it hit, until we found out what was going on. I remember going to shul in the morning, and there was reports, it was 7 o'clock here, so it was already 10 o'clock. It was about 45 minutes after the second plane had hit. So people were coming into shul. Did you hear? There was a plane flew into the World Trade Center. Okay, so you figure, you know what? Okay, a plane. These are so huge things. So like this plane flew into. No, these were 2 huge planes. And by the time we started to find out, and then we saw in front of our eyes. Who could ever forget the sight of the 2 twin towers just collapsing? Into it. It's like you're like. We never seen in decades. Did we see such an act of terrorists on our own soil? Never. I mean, since the Japanese in Pearl Harbor, this has never happened. Okay, Timothy McVeigh blew up the building in Oklahoma City, but this was way out of proportion. I mean, this was 2 huge twin towers that we blew up. And I said then, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, remember this day and keep that feeling in your stomach. Because it's going to come a day when we're going to say, September 11th, it's so long ago, forget about it, who remembers it? And that's what basically happens. I mean, we're giving port contracts to the United Arab Emirates already. Had this come up on September 12th, you know what would have happened to George Bush? They would have taken him down like Haman. They would have taken him down to Washington. Now, 5 years later, they're our friends, they're good, they're nice. Think about September 11th. All you got to do is close your eyes and view the planes crashing into those towers and the towers collapsing. It wasn't only the people, the 3,000 people that perished. I mean, that itself is a tragedy enough. But you know what it was? This was a kick to the gut of the United States of America, to the greatest and strongest nation on earth, that 19 Schmendricks should be able to bring down this was the prize of capitalism, 2 huge towers, and they had the president of the United States on the run that morning. Who was it? 19 Schmendricks, mostly from Saudi Arabia and a few other of those countries. So what I want to say is that this story is not only a historical story. This is not only we read the Magillah every year to tell us, that Esther did such a wonderful thing and she gave her life away for the Jewish people. No. We read the story to remind us of one thing. First of all, God watches us. Even though we know sometimes we think to ourselves, where are you? I mean, like in World War II, I'm sure the people that were participated in, as we talked about, during our history lessons, we're wondering, where's God? All of that stuff. But nonetheless, we want to believe that God watches us like the apple of his eye. And not only is this a story that happened thousands of years ago, but he also intervenes in our own personal lives. That things happen to us like the story of Purim. That all of a sudden, miraculously, you find yourself in a position, you need something or whatever it is, and you bump into the right person, and doors open up, opportunities. All of these things is God's way of directing you and leading you into where you should be going. Sometimes, like children, we talk about educating children, right? You could do your best to educate your children. You could give them the best education, the finest private schools. You could get them the best tutors. You could take them on the best trips. And then they're just going to do this. They're going to fold their arms and say, we don't want, we're not happy, it's not our thing. We don't care. Then there's nothing you could do about it. There's absolutely nothing you could do about it. The same thing is his relationship with us. The fact is that God tries to lead us along a path, but we're stubborn. We are stiff-necked people that won't listen and don't want to take this. He gave us a country, the land of Israel, a miraculous event that hasn't happened, and then we're giving away pieces of it. Yeah. I mean, he gives it to us, and then we're giving away pieces of it. Okay, this is crazy. Some people would look at this and say, this is crazy. Who does something like that? But nonetheless, this story is a story that's a living story. And when we come on Purim, we're going to read from the Magillah, and we listen closely to the words, our job is going to be to remember that these people live within inside each and every one of us. That Haman is not dead. I think Haman is long gone just because we hung him up on a gallows of 50 cubits high. You think he was gone? No, he comes around. Shebechol dar vadar. Every single generation, a Haman stands up. And if we don't recognize it, and we don't see it, and we don't do something about it, we haven't learned a lesson from the Magillah. Mordechai took action. The moment he knew something, he immediately called everything into play and he took action. That's what we need to do. Like this guy from Iran.
Oh, yeah.
You see, a lot of people say about this guy, he's a clown. You know what? Don't take him seriously because he shoots off the cuff. No, Howard Stern is a clown, okay? These people are entertainers, are clowns. He is serious. A man that leads a nation of 60 million people and says he would like to wipe Israel off the map, he's a kind of a guy that we need to take seriously. And if we don't take it seriously, we're going to be the ones that are going to later say, why? Why didn't we? We heard him. The guy said it. This is not made up. He denies the Holocaust ever happened. He's ready to send scientists to prove that, all of these things. Look at the story of the Magillah. Just think of the story of the Magillah. Okay. Now, to go back in the beginning, because I want to go into the story just a little bit, with a little bit deeper of an understanding and a little bit more of an appreciation. What happened over here? I mean, what's really going on over here? Why did God enact and try to, lead and put us in this path of danger? What did the Jews do to deserve this? This seems like a very strange story. That all of a sudden Haman, he looked at Mordechai, and Mordechai didn't bow down, so he was going to kill all the Jews. What is going on over here? So we need to understand that this is a story that takes place at a very specific time in history. What happened was, as we all know, that when Moses died, Joshua came into the land of Israel. And through a series of battles and wars that were not only fought by him, but was later fought by King David, Israel captured a nice sizable piece of territory in what we call today land of Israel. You could look at the maps, the boundaries of all of these things. After King Solomon died, when King Solomon died, King Solomon was King David's son. So after he died, the nation of Israel split into two. There were two kingdoms now. The kingdom of the south and the kingdom of the north. The kingdom of the north were represented by the tribe of Ephraim, and they were called the 10 tribes. And the kingdom to the south were represented by Judah and Benjamin, and their headquarters was Yerushalayim, where the headquarters of the 10 kings was in Shechem. They had built another altar and all of that. Now, so for many years, the two had interaction with each other, even though they had different kings and a different set of problems, but at least they interacted. According to modern historians, in about the year 576 BC, which is it doesn't really line up with traditional numbers, but let's just use historical numbers. I mean, even though for the tape, I'm just letting you know that these are only modern historical numbers. The Torah does not agree with these dates, but I'm just going to use it because that's the easiest ones to remember. So about 576, there was a king called Sancherib, and Sancherib was the king of a mighty Assyrian army. And the Assyrian army came, and he exiled the 10 northern tribes. He annexed that whole part of Israel. He fought a war, he annexed it, he won it, and he kind of pushed them out. Where did he send them? All over the place. Basically, they took a route. And because what he did was what he called population displacement. Because you know what? When you have people living in the same area, you know what happens? They become very comfortable. So we here living in America, we know the highways, we know the byways. You'll notice something very interesting. You know what? You ever see a high-speed chase on TV? Yeah, here in California, they're very common. Every 2 days, another guy thinks he's going to outrun the cops. Which shite is going to tippish? A tippish. A dummy. Okay, fine. You know what? Generally, 95% of the time, you know where they head?
To the home.
Exactly. You know why? Because they know. They know it. If I was running, where am I going to run? To Riverside.
You don't know the roads.
I don't know the road. So where am I going to run? I'm going to run right back to my house. Okay, so I'm going to run. I'm going to go down to 405, and I'm going to say, "Oh, look at that! The rabbi's running down to 405. He's getting off at Orange. Oh, why is he getting off at Orange? Must be who knows?" And he's running down Amelia. And then they think that it's random. It's not random. This is where I know the highways and the byways. I know where to go in and out of the things. So what Sancherib did is he understood that. He understood that you're most comfortable where you've been living for 1 generation, 5 generations, 10 generations. So what's the best way to make sure that you're never going to revolt against him? He picks you up and he moves you to Riverside. And he takes the people from Riverside and he moves them to Long Beach. Then he takes the people from Huntington Beach and he moves them to Agura. And he mixes up the it's like a cholent. He mixes up the whole pot. Now, what happens? We're completely discombobulated. Now we go live now somewhere, who knows where in there. Where did I say we end up? In Riverside. What's Riverside? Where's the ocean? I wake up in the morning, the ocean. And therefore, he throws everybody off balance. No one is sitting. And that's exactly what he did. He took the known world, so therefore he took people from the outside, Samaritans, and he moved them into Israel. He took people from Israel, he moved them out through Syria, through Iraq, all the way, who knows how far they went. To Haidu, to Kush, they went to Iran, they went to Turkey, they went to India, they just ran. They left. Who was left in Israel at that time? Was left just the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. Were living the southern kingdom, or called the kingdom of Israel, the Judaic kingdom. There was a mighty fellow by the name of Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was a Babylonian. The Babylonians thought, you know what? Who needs now Sancherib? So Sancherib was first beaten by the Persians, and then the Babylonians beat up on the Persians. So once the Babylonians beat up on the Persians, they took over the land of Israel and they controlled it. Eventually, he exiled them to Babylon, and that was the end. He burnt down the Holy Temple and he threw them out of Israel. He threw them out of Israel. Where did they go? So they ended up going to a place called Shushan. Shushan is now, you know where Shushan is? It's in Iran. They ended up living in Persia. Many Jews ended up in Babylon and ended up in Persia. And this is how Jews ended up in Shushan. Because Nebuchadnezzar basically pushed them east. He kept pushing them go to the east. So some settled in Babylon, and then they kept. And those days, I mean, he already took over the Persian Empire. So he took, he mixed them all up, and that's how the Jews ended up in this particular part of the world. Now Vashti was actually his granddaughter, and Achashverosh was just a fellow that was coming up the ranks, was a general in Nebuchadnezzar's army. So when Nebuchadnezzar died and then his son died, here was Achashverosh found that the quickest way to the throne was how? By marrying the princess. Okay? So he married the princess, and the next thing you know, this Achashverosh is unbelievably, he's up there, and now he's the king. He's not a king of this enormous empire. Now they tell us in the Medrash, it's very interesting, that the first verse is Vahibi me Achashverosh. It was the days of Achashverosh. Who Achashverosh? This was the Achashverosh, Hamelech, who reigned Mehoidu v'ad Kush, from India till Ethiopia. This is how large his empire was. So think about it. If you have a picture of the world and a map of the world in your eyes, you could think here's India. You're going to stretch all the way west through the Middle East, down through Egypt, right to Ethiopia. That's how big. 127 countries he ruled. So a commentator says, why did they say who ruled 127 countries? Because it says, when he took over, he probably had double that much. He probably had twice as much area. But he wasn't such a good king, so his kingdom was cut into half. But at this particular point, he had 127 countries, and the wars had stopped. Because he was fighting wars all the time, it stopped. And what did he do? To show that he was still the powerful king, even though that he had lost a sizable piece of action, he was going to show his wealth. And he pulled out all the stops. Everything that he had in his kingdom, he pulled out that day for this party, to show how powerful he was. Now the one thing that he had, which was a tremendous chutzpah, was that he had vessels from the Holy Temple. Okay? Because don't forget that once Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple, he took everything with him. He took all of the riches of Jerusalem. And Achashverosh inherited those. So at that party, he said he was going to display them. Hey, look what I got. I got this from the temple, I got that from the temple. No. And he invited everybody to come to this party. You know who showed up to this party? Jews. Mordechai went around and put out a proclamation, a letter to all of the Jewish communities, do not go to this party. Don't go. You know why? Because this is rubbing our nose in the sand. That's all he wants to do. He just wants to show us how weak we are. But you know what? You get a letter from the President of the United States. And the President says, I would like to have you come to my Hanukkah party. Are you going to go?
Yes.
Who wouldn't go? Everybody would go. Most people would go. I would say everybody go. Bob is not going. Even though he loves Bush, but he's not going. Even though no matter what, he's not going to visit Bush. Okay, but most people would go. Most people will go, they'd shake his hand, they'd get a photo up, a picture with the president, they'd come home, you put in the press telegram, here's Perelmuter with the president, he's holding, he's shaking, he's looking, he's not, fine, great, okay, so that's one thing. But what if the president says, come on, I'm gonna invite you to the White House, and you know what we're gonna eat from? We're gonna eat from the very vessels that were in the temple. So now what's he saying? He's sending you a message that he's kind of playing with you. He's toying with you. So what do you have to do? So Mordechai expected the Jews to absolutely have strength of character. He expected them to say absolutely not. You know what? We're not coming to this party. We're boycotting. Because what he's doing is sacrilegious. It's totally sacrilegious. It's worse than printing cartoons of Muhammad in a Danish newspaper. Okay? Much more sacrilegious than that. He's literally doing something that's embarrassing us. But you know what happened? The Jews lost their self-esteem. The Jews had no self-respect. And they all came rushing to Shushan. Oh, and the party. Ooh, listen to this. So in those days when King Ahasuerus sat on his royal throne, which was in Shushan, the capital, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast for all his officials, all his servants, the army of Persia and Media, the nobles and the officials of the provinces being present, when he displayed the riches of the glorious kingdom and the splendor of his excellent majesty for many days. 180 days. It was a half a year the party took place. A bunch of ladygayers. You know what ladygayers? Unemployed bums. They sit and party for a half a year. And when the days were filled, the king made a week-long feast. All the people were present in Shushan. Small there was hangings of white fine cotton, blue wool, held with cords of fine linen and purple wool upon silver rods and marble pillars. The couches of gold and silver were a pavement of green and white and shells and onyx marble. The drinks were served in golden goblets, no two goblets alike, and the royal wine in abundance according to the bounty of the king. And the drinking was according to the law without coercion. So the king had ordered all the officers of the house that they should according to every man's pleasure. Could you imagine that? Everything was beautiful, royal, purple. You sat on a couch, you had enough wine, and no two goblets were the same. Right? Everybody had a different looking goblet. It was gold. And you wanted filet mignon, you got filet mignon. You wanted fish, whatever you wanted. Lamb chop, whatever. The king pulled out non-stops. Mordechai looked at this and said, well, look at this. Shame on us that we run after this guy. Shame on us that we have to come there. Can I look at this display of all of the trophies of the vanquished people? We're foreigners in this country, he said to them. But they didn't pay attention to him. They didn't listen to him because the splendor and the glory enticed them. It seduced them. They wanted to feel like all the other goyim. If everybody else can go, why can't I go? Right? Isn't that what we always say? We want to be like everybody else. What are the Gentiles going to say? My neighbor McNamara and my neighbor Piltutsky, what are they going to say when they're on the way to the palace? I'm going to say, no, I'm not going. I'm protesting. Come on, don't be such a party pooper. Come along, Perelmuter. What are you worried about? Mordechai stood there trying to tell them this is not the way to do it. You have to have backbone. You have to have some kind of, you have to have some kind of self-respect. Nothing. Gornished, mit gornished. Okay, Gurnish helfen. That's the point. When God looked down at this and he saw, he gave them an opportunity to prove that they were above this, that they were actually strong people, that they had a backbone and they could stand up for their rights, and it meant something that they were in exile, that they weren't comfortable. God said, you know what? I'm going to rouse up the bear. That's what Hashem said. And now I'm going to get them going. They're going to see what it's like to be in exile. You know what? We learn a story from, you know who? From our friend, our great-grandfather Joseph. You know what tells us about Joseph? An interesting story. I want to go back to the beginning of Genesis. Not the beginning of Genesis, but the story of Joseph. We feel bad for him, right? Because here's a kid, 17 years old. He comes to visit his brothers. What do his brothers do? What do they do to him when he comes to visit? Well, you know what they do to him. What do the brothers do? Exactly. Thank you very much. They sell him, right? They sell him. They sell him, right? They sell him down. They sell him down to Egypt. Okay. Okay. And what happens to him in Egypt? Here's poor Joseph, broken, dejected, ripped away from his family in a foreign country, desolate, destitute, in jail. What happens? So it says that Joseph he became a successful man, and he remained in the house of the Egyptian master. His master perceived that Hashem was with him, and whatever he did, Hashem made him succeed in his hand. Joseph found favor in his eyes, and he attended him. He appointed him over his household, and whatever he had placed in his custody. And it happened from that time he appointed him over his house, and whatever he had, that Hashem blessed the Egyptian's house on Joseph's account. So Hashem's blessing was in whatever he owned, in the house and in the field. He left all that he had in Joseph's custody with him. Present, he concerned himself with nothing except the bread that he would eat. So here all of a sudden, here's Joseph, ripped away from his family, ends up in Egypt, sold to an Egyptian master, now becomes the manager of the guy's estate, right? And he's being successful. He knows how to wheel and deal, make deals, make this. He makes his master very rich. What about his father? What about his poor father that's at home crying?
He thinks he's dead.
Inconsolable, thinks that Joseph's dead. Joseph doesn't think about his father, and the next verse is very telling. Extremely, extremely telling. So here you have Joseph who's like, now look at me, I'm in Egypt, I'm the manager of the guy, and I'm doing all of these things. Now Joseph was handsome of form and handsome of appearance. What does that have to do with it? 2 sentences telling us that Joseph was a successful manager. Now it tells us that he was handsome. Rashi interprets, Joseph was making himself handsome. He was standing in front of the mirror every day, how do I look, shaving nicely, combing his hair, wearing nice clothes, Brooks Brothers suits. No more, he wasn't in the dungeon anymore, right? He wasn't living in the dungeon anymore. That was long gone. Here he was in Egypt, Mr. Big Shot. So he wore those nice Brooks Brothers suits, the Bruno Magli shoes, a nice tie from who knows, Barbaries or whatever, a Tiffany well, ganze Macher now. And he's looking in the mirror. In the meantime, his poor father Jacob is in Israel doing what? Where's my son Joseph? So Hashem said, Joseph, you think you came here to Egypt all of a sudden, so you should look handsome? What does he do the next step? After these days, the master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and she said, let me be with Joseph. So what Rashi says is because Joseph didn't feel the pain of his father, he should have felt the pain and told his master, listen, I got to go on vacation for a couple of weeks. I want to go see my father, or write him a letter, or somehow get him a message instead of being busy in front of the mirror. Hashem said, now I'm going to rouse up the bear. And he got Potiphar's wife to try to seduce him, and next thing he ends up in jail, and then the rest of the story comes forward. The exact same thing happened in Shushan here. Exactly the same thing, where the Jewish people who were down and out should have felt to themselves, you know what, God in heaven, where do we belong? We belong living in Shushan. We belong living in Persia, in Media, in Babylon. We belong in one place. Where? Israel. We belong in Israel. The fact that we're over here, we should be beating our chest and saying, when is God going to take us out of here? When are we going to go back to rebuild the temple? When are we going to do this? You know what happened? They bought homes, they settled, they made businesses, changed their names, started looking like the Persians, started talking Persian, and next thing you know, baby, Ahasuerus calls them to a party, and he says, I'm going to have the vessels of the Beis HaMikdash displayed. So instead of sending back a letter with the Yad HaChazaka word, you know what the Yad HaChazaka word is? I'm going to step out of this camera for a second. Can you see me now? You just want to be right back in a second. Here, this is the Yad HaChazaka word, okay? Because this is Yad, right? The Yad and the strong arm award they should have given him, right? But they didn't give him the strong arm award. They came running to him. Let's get Potiphar. Now Hashem says, let's get Potiphar's wife. Now I'm going to show the Jewish people that they should really... And that's why the story of Haman came into play. See, we don't realize it when we read the story. We don't know the background of what went on over here. But I'm telling you here, is that's exactly the reason why Hashem now got Haman all cooked up. And why he got Ahasuerus all cooked up all of a sudden. The fact that Vashti had to be killed, because she was a rotten no-goodnik. She was a miserable, bitter, angry, cruel, vicious woman. I mean, treated the people with total disdain. Good. I mean, I shed no tears for Vashti. Trust me. And the fact that he picked Esther beforehand, you know why? Because God always sets up the antidote before he gives the disease. That's why it says facetiously, I say this, but I don't really mean this. But you know what? If you look at the order of the Talmud, the way the books are in order, the book of divorce comes before the book of the ketubah. So people say it should be exactly the opposite. The ketubah comes first, and God forbid the divorce later. So the answer is God always sets the antidote before he sends the disease. Okay, that's just again, you get it? The divorce comes before the... No, forget it. It only works, okay, now you just, okay? What? No. He says, why does he give the get before the kesubah? Because he sends the remedy before the disease. It's a poor attempt at humor, right? Okay, I know. But this is what he did with Esther, is he set Esther up beforehand in order, he knew that she's going to save the people. But he had to rouse the people up. He had to get them going, thinking about something. Because here they were in Persia, and they were sinking lower and lower into this Persian society. They were becoming one with the Persians. So that's when Hashem sent Haman, and he sent Haman to wake the Jewish people up. So now that we're going to say, you know what? Something pains me. Something hurts me. Something really is wrong over here, and gets them to repent in this whole rigmarole. And then Hashem comes in at the last moment to save them. And if you think about it, is this not true everywhere Jews are? Everywhere Jews are, we find ourselves almost in the same kind of a situation. We come into a country, we start to assimilate, we start looking like the regular citizens of the country, we start talking the language, and slowly but surely we kind of forget who we are. See, the one thing the Zionists made a big mistake. Not that they made a mistake in going to Zion, don't get me wrong, but they underestimated the Jewish people. Or I should say they overestimated the Jewish people. They believed in the old credo, if you build it, they will come. You know what? I have to be honest with you. In the first and second big aliyah that they had from Eastern Europe to Israel, like in the late 1800s, for every one Jew that went to Palestine, 10 came, you know where? United States of America. 10 came for every one that went to Palestine. You know why? Because the Jews felt there's no cats in America. You know, because there's no, you ever seen that movie Five Mousekewitz? My grandson was just watching it this evening. I was watching it with Shmuley. It's a whole movie about Five Mousekewitz. He's a mouse that goes from Europe to America, believing that there's no cats in America. The whole time they're singing on the boat, oh, Baruch Hashem, they're going to come to America, and there's no cats, because the cats is their big, their enemy, of course, because cats chase the mice. So they came over here believing that the land is paved with gold. All you need is two things, a shovel and a bucket. You're just going to go out there, going to shovel the gold into the bucket, and again, we're going to go like Yehudim Ha'Israel. It'll be like Yehudim for the Jewish people. Didn't exactly work out that way, but for many Jews, it was a God-given, decent living, which was very hard to do. But what about Palestine? What about our homeland? Every day we say 3 times in prayers, may our eyes see towards Zion. You had a chance. You had an opportunity. It was open. You think they didn't care? You think the Ottoman Empire cared if you went to Palestine? Who cared if you went to Palestine? No one cared. It was then the British, and all that stuff. Then there became quotas and shmodas and blodas and all of these things. We didn't hear. We didn't listen, and we didn't hear a message. That's why, unfortunately, there are people that later on Zionists, religious Zionists, that claim, you know why the Holocaust happened? You know why? Because God gave us an opportunity to escape and we didn't. God gave us the homeland to come back, and what did we do? We sat in Europe. We sat there. Hitler came in 1920.
Jabotinsky was
Exactly. But I'm even talking about Jabotinsky, who was a secular nationalist. I'm talking about religious Zionists who went to Israel and they said, you know what? The reason why the Holocaust came is for God to wake up the Jewish people. To wake them up. What are you sitting in Poland? What do you have in Russia? What do you have in Lithuania? What are you losing there? Here we have a chance to build up a homeland. We could live in Israel and prosper. But to the vast majority of Jews did what? Stays. Germans went first. But most of the Jews in Europe did what? Stayed. They stayed. They didn't go. The few went to America, a few went here, but most of them stayed in Europe.
and they got killed.
That was it. Now, had we had foresight, no. I mean, easy for me to sit over here, in 2006 and criticize what went on, 100 years ago, or 80 years ago, or 70 years ago. Sure, it's easy. You play Monday morning quarterback. Hindsight is always 20/20. So we would have known, we would have ran to Palestine. We would have had over there 6 million Jews, living over there. But it didn't happen that way. But every once in a while, God wakes us up. God says, people, hello, you know what? You're here, I'm here. Don't forget me not. And that's what happened with the story of Purim. And the story of Purim is that Baal Shem Tov has always said, Kol ha-koire ha-Megillah lemafreya. If someone reads the Megillah, which really means backwards, for some odd reason he reads chapter 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, lo yotza. He has not fulfilled his obligation. You have to read the story in chronological order, starting chapter 1, 2, 3. The Baal Shem Tov added something else. He says, Kol ha-koire ha-Megillah lemafreya. If someone reads the Megillah and thinks it was lemafreya, he thinks the story was back then. Lo yotza. He has not fulfilled his obligation because the story of the Megillah is today. We are, what?
There are so many liberal Jews, Rabbi, as you well know. Nobody wanted to listen to Kahana.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to listen to Kahana except me.
Except us.
Us.
L'chaim. You see what happened to me when you mentioned that name of Meir Kahana? Look what happened. It overflowed.
I loved him. He was my idol. He was my boss.
Oh.
I worked for him.
Oh, good. You know what? No one wanted to listen to him, and probably, why? Because his message didn't resonate that well with many people.
You know why, Rabbi?
Why?
He kept saying, Kahana wanted to kill the Arabs. He never ever
Never
said
wanted to
kill.
kill them, right.
Never said kill.
Moved them out the
Move
door
them.
and locked the gates behind.
Right. But you know what? I'm not gonna. It's hard here to stand here and debate politics because you're always gonna end up somewhere who knows where, But
Look at Pollard.
But-
When are we gonna get Pollard?
yeah, when are we gonna get Pollard out?
Prisoner of Zion, the Israeli Supreme Court says he was not a prisoner of Zion.
There you go. What are you gonna do? It's we don't
Look
wait.
what the Israelis have done to their own people on Amana.
Yeah.
I mean, they've killed, they've beaten up. I've got pictures on my
Yeah.
on my internet because I have
No, but you know what? The story is whether you agree with Kahana, whether you don't agree with Kahana, whether you agree here, whether you agree there. The thing is that we don't wake up until it's too late. We don't wake up and smell the coffee till it's too late. The only ones that should be dictating policy in Israel is who? We, Jews. But what do? We listen to the sound of the world. We listen, what is Germany going to say? What is France going to say? What is Bush going to say? Who cares what Bush is going to say? Bush, I tell you know what? Bush is going to retire, and I tell you what he's going to do the first thing. He's moving to Crawford, Texas, and he can tell Israel, forget about it. Have a nice day, because he's not, this. And the next president, the president of the United States is the president of the United States.
Not Israel.
Exactly. That's the point. So we can't. Al tiftachu v'nedivim. Hashem has begged us: do not put your trust in those people that give, that are willing to be your nediv, that are givers. Only trust in Hashem. And now Bob is going now to Israel. He's going to be visiting with the Prime Minister. He's going to give him this message in the name of the people of Long Beach. You're going to say, Mr. And I'm sure they're going to say this to him, Mr. Ehud Olmert. Israel is in the hands of the Jews. Don't give up anything. Don't give any more. Enough is enough.
Judea and Samaria is going down in two.
Enough is enough. But you know what? That's the story. Really, the story of the story of Esther. That it's a living, breathing story that every single day we meet, and it doesn't only have to do with global issues. We're talking about global issues, and in reality, the people here in this room, we might have a little bit of say in Israel, but in reality, you know what? Israel is it's a big world. What we could do is we run our own lives, and the people that we come into contact with, we see situations where we need to speak up. We need to do things. We need to be more aggressive in what we have to do for Yiddishkeit. And that really is the story of Purim in its true and essential form. Haster Aster. God covered himself over. He removed himself out of the story to allow the participants, all of these people, from Esther to Mordechai to Haman to Achashverosh to Vashti to Bigson, Serish, everybody to play out their role. Because every one of those represents somebody here inside of us. I hope and I pray that I have the fortitude and the strength to be the Mordechai, to be able to stand up. It's not so easy to stand up and say, American values, please keep Shabbos, eat kosher, do all of these things. Because who's your audience? People that stand there, cynical people that stand there and say, Rabbi, you're old-fashioned, you're cracked, you don't know what you're talking about, we know we don't need this, this is America, it's completely different. It's not. America is like Shushan. We need to stand up to be proud. And the more proud we are of ourselves, the rest of the world is proud of us. You think people like sniveling little victims? Nobody likes it. You know what? We think, this is again, when we're going global, but we think that if we're going to be the victim, oh, poor me, poor Israel, if the European Union is going to run and Russia's going to run to protect us. No one likes us. The only one is...
Strength is everything.
That's the way it is. That's the way it is.
That's what kills me with the Israeli government. They can move these Arabs, they can do things with them. They're shooting artillery shells into the wrong room and into fields where they think that they're shooting Qassam rockets in.
Right.
But they're not aiming for those rockets.
Remember, the story of Esther is alive. Next week what we'll do is we'll get more into the Magillah. We'll learn some parts of the Magillah. You'll see with commentary, as I told you tonight, if you look deeper into the story, it opens up a completely new vista. It's never the same as it was before. And next week we'll pick it up in the story again. All right? Okay. But this is only part of the treat. I want to show you the true treat tonight. Because this is, as much as I'm a work of art, I'm nothing compared to this work of art. Oh, be careful.
It's not wet up here.
No, it's not wet. Let's make sure it's dry. We're going to clean off Now, we all know how a Megillah is written, right? A Megillah has to be written the same way a Torah is written. Exactly the same way with parchment, with a quill, with ink. Every letter has to be specifically, perfectly written. Now, that's a regular Megillah. This is a regular Megillah plus. Now, you have to come up and see this because I'm telling you, I have never seen anything in my entire life like this.
Where did you get that, Bob?
Bob?
Order?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
Coming up. Let's look at it from this side
Oh
here.
my God.
Oh, no.
Oh my God.
We're gonna
Come
roll
around
this
here,
here.
Pam.
We're gonna roll
wow,
it because
come
it's,
around, Zig. All right.
this is
Oh, go around the other side too.
this
Oh
is
my
this is a
God.
Da Vinci. This is a Michelangelo.
Oh my God, look at that.
No, but you
you
have
guys
to-
are working on that?
This is. How many of these are there, Bob, in the world?
How many?
By this artist?
By this artist.
3.
3. Come over here. Come
Oh
here.
my
See, come over here.
God.
Come over here. Come over here.
Zig?
Look at this.
Side.
Now a normal Megillah it just has this. Just this writing here. That's right. He made the writing and look at the detail in
Oh
this.
my God.
Look at the artwork over here.
Unbelievable.
Look at the king.
Look at that. And they don't use any rule, you know.
Nothing, no
lines,
rulers, no rulers.
Nothing.
So it's all done by hand. All
Every
this
single thing done by
unbel-
hand.
Unbelievable.
I mean, so there's
Unbelievable.
two
Wow.
things going on here at the same time. One is the writing of the Megillah itself, that each letter is handwritten with
Yeah.
special ink.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, not
quill.
special
Yeah, right,
quill
yeah,
and
right.
special ink. Now, no letter is touching any other letter. No letter is missing. And look at this. Look at the detail over here. I
Yeah.
want to show you
Can you
something here.
imagine that?
Look at this word over here. You see this word nigzar?
Oh, look at
Okay?
that. Look at that. Oh,
Each one of these letters has a crown on top.
Yeah,
For
look at
for reasons that
Yeah,
God
right.
only mentioned to Moses. Look at that. Not one crown is missing,
Yeah.
and not only is not one crown missing, but of the 9 crowns, every one is made in perfect proportion to the other one. Did you notice that, Nigzar? That's unbelievable. Because most guys, when they make what these are called tagim. These are called the crowns on the letters. Most people make that. They don't pay much attention to it. They put 3 markings on top.
Yeah,
look at that
shit, look at
in
that.
perfect proportion. But then you got to look. Then you have to look at the artwork because the artwork. Oh,
What's the matter?
he wrote. Osir lahatik.
What happened?
As
What is it? There's some writing?
no,
that we
no,
don't
no,
see?
no photographs. No photographs. There's no pictures taken of this. So filming is not so bad. You could film
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
no, he wanted to make sure. You know, he was the artist, but now the artist is in Ilam Haba is making.
Wow.
Can we look a little bit further? Let's look a little bit further
you
down.
imagine?
Look at that. Now I said Esther was greenish and 75, but she doesn't look that here, does she?
Let me see. Which
She
one is
doesn't.
her?
Just this is Esther.
Oh,
She doesn't
no.
look 75 and greenish.
no
She
way.
looks tall and.
She's wearing a green gown.
She's wearing a green.
Everything else is green. Notice the clothes are green.
Yeah, the clothes are green, but not her.
No.
Her complexion. Her complexion.
Yeah.
Elegant.
Here's Mordechai
Yeah.
sitting. He's saying Tillim, right? And these are the 2 warriors that are they're conspiring to kill Achashverosh. They were going to poison him that night, and he listens. Now the reason you may ask here's an interesting tidbit
Yeah.
that you may not know. They see him sitting there. So why are they talking out loud so he can hear it?
They think he's
because
dead.
they don't read, they don't understand that he understands Persian.
Oh.
They see a Jew, they think he only speaks Yiddish. They figure he only speaks Yiddish. Little do they know
Not
that more.
Yiddish.
I know, I'm just joking.
Hebrew.
Hebrew, of course, I only speak Fasis when I say Yiddish. But they think he's only reading Hebrew here to kill him.
אני לא למדתי עברית.
That's right. You learned Hebrew. He spoke many languages. That's why he was able to do it. Now we'll continue down. Look at this. Look at I mean, just unbelievable. The
Unbelievable.
crowns.
Oh my God. I mean, God.
How long
Like,
did it take
yeah.
him to do this?
Oh my
I don't know. How
God.
long did it take
Years,
him?
I guess. Years,
Years.
right?
It took him less than a year.
Less than a year.
Less
But he
than
must
a
have.
year?
But he must have worked on it a lot.
No, the artist did his work first, and then the scribe.
Did inside.
Oh my God.
Beautiful.
Unbelievable.
Gee.
So
Oh,
here's
wow.
Mordechai.
Yeah.
Here's the wicked Haman.
Oh.
And here's the 2 guys. Everybody's bowing down to him except Mordechai.
Oh, I
So he
see.
won't bow.
Oh, he
right.
So he is very angry.
Yeah. Oh.
He's an angry man.
Yeah. Oh.
And here's Mordechai hanging around the palace,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
right? And he find Don't touch? You can't.
I'm not touching.
Oh, okay. So
I'm not touching.
oh. So here's Mordecai. He finds out that he wants to kill the Jews. So look at his clothes.
Yeah.
See his clothes?
Yeah.
See, it's torn.
Yeah.
Because it tells us that Mordecai, as soon as he heard about the decree, rent his clothes like he was in mourning.
Oh.
Esther
Yeah.
hears that he has torn clothes. She sends out clothes. She tells Mordecai, "Why are you walking around in this sackcloth? Wear good clothes."
Yeah.
He refuses to listen to her. He says, "Are you nuts? That's what you're thinking about this time right now? I should be wearing good clothes. The guy's going to kill us."
Yeah.
So then he sends Esther. So Esther, she doesn't look green to me.
No.
She
No,
looks
she's
well
got a
proportioned.
green
He made a
dress.
well proportioned girl. You know?
I think that's why he probably did it in green.
Yeah. And then here's the king. He extends
Yeah.
his scepter to her, so she could come in and she pleads his case with him.
Yeah.
See, she pleads his case that what? That they should come to a party. That's all she wanted. You know what?
Yeah.
Take it slowly, slowly. Next thing, he has insomnia.
Oh.
The poor king has
You notice how
insomnia.
every crown is different.
Oh.
Yeah, it is.
The crown is
Everyone's
different.
different.
It's
Oh,
different. They're all.
Looks the same.
It's
No,
beautiful.
No,
they're
look
all
at
different.
look at the jewels on it, look at the,
They're all. They're all
everyone is different.
Oh, yeah, see it? Yeah, they're different.
I
Oh,
can
yeah,
see
I
it.
didn't
Yeah,
realize
yeah,
that.
yeah. Oh, my
Yeah,
God.
my.
This is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It is.
I think you can leave this back.
Unbelievable. I mean,
And a
how
year, it just took one
anybody could
year.
do
I
this?
know where you live.
Oh,
It's unbelievable, it only took 1 year.
yeah. It's,
Not
and
less
then,
than that.
then here's the king. He can't sleep.
Yeah.
This is actually one of Haman's sons, they say.
Oh.
Haman's son. So that's why he didn't want to read the story, but he was forced to. The king was, he told him read the story. So he read the story.
Yeah.
Here doesn't look that good. I don't like the horse because the horse is kind of like it's like a Shetland pony.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but maybe that was the horse, and then Haman is dragging him around on the
Yeah.
horse. Here they come to the meal.
Yeah.
Here's Haman Achashverosh,
Yeah.
and then she tells him, she's pointing to him.
Yeah.
That's what she's telling the king. This is the no goodnik that wants to kill me.
Oh.
So then he writes
Paskudnik.
the Paskudnik. This is the Paskudnik that wants
That's
to kill
the
me.
first Paskudnik.
Oh, and many. He was, so
First of many.
then he writes a document telling the Jewish people that they can stand up and protect themselves.
Yeah.
Here's where they fight the war, and then
Oh, but there's more.
there's more.
Yeah.
Look at that.
forgot.
Look at that.
that.
Look at this. This is a nice scene.
Jeez,
All right,
wow,
yeah, that's
look at
good.
Oh, that's violence.
That's Haman, right?
That's Haman and his 10
Yeah,
sons.
that's good. Oh, that's
Count how many people are on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
10.
And these are all his sons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 sons they all hung up there.
Jeez.
Then the Jews are standing over there. They're happy. They're
Explain why such large.
because the miracle is so great.
Yeah.
So there's different customs. Not all the Megillahs are like this. But he took a step. He made every one of these big to show how great the miracle was. That even though he had 10 sons, they all went down like
Yeah.
God flicked them like a little flick.
Oh.
And then the rest of the story is here they're celebrating.
Yeah.
They're sending presents. The women are feeding each other, to the poor, to the sending presents. And here's the Megillah scroll. This is unbelievable.
Now what do you do?
I want to do another one. What?
can I ask you something?
We
Just a
read it.
second.
We read it on Purim.
Oh, I see.
This particular
Yeah,
letter here,
it's a bigger letter.
that's that's really out of context.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You'll notice if you go back to the 10 sons. Just a second, Bob. Can you go back to the 10 sons? Look over here. You see this little sheen here?
Yeah.
That's also out of
That's out of context.
And look at this vav.
Yeah.
This vav is a big
Yeah.
vav.
So what does that mean?
There is a Kabbalah. There's a tradition that came down from Moses that throughout the entire Torah there is every letter has one chance to be larger and one letter to be smaller, and they're picked at different intervals. Like in a Chumash here, for example, if we took out the Torah, you will know. I'm not going to take out the Torah, but you'll find like in certain places, like Vayikra. Let's pull up Vayikra just for a second. You'll notice here, the first verse of Vayikra. See the aleph of the first verse? See, it's written very small.
Oh, yeah.
You see? It's much smaller than the rest of the letters.
Yeah.
Right.
You take, for example, here in Kisisa, you'll notice, this is a Kabbalah. Why each particular place? I'm sure there's a reason for it, but I don't know why this particular aleph and why not this aleph. But there was a reason why, and it was passed down from generation to generation. And in the Megillah, you have 2 or 3 letters like that also. Here I'll note. I'll show you. You see, all through the Torah, every once in a blue moon you see it. Like over here, you see the Resh. See this reish?
Oh, yeah.
This is a much thicker reish, you see?
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
thick, yeah.
It's thick. And then you have one over here, you see the nun?
Yeah,
There's-
it's thick, yeah.
So there's certain
Gotta be a
throughout-
reason
Yeah,
for
there's probably a reason why they picked this one and not the other nun. But this is one of these things that come down mysteriously through the ages, and we probably forgot what their initial reason was, and we just just follow along. That's what it is. That's why in Judaism we have to live to at least 300-400 years to finish everything. Because I'm not planning to go anywhere soon.
That's what, I agree with you.
Right?
Right.
All right.
That's my plan.
This is the best. This is exceptional. It's exceptional. It's one of a kind. All right, ladies and
Okay,
gentlemen,
thank you.
Thank you.
you're very welcome.